Hello everyone, welcome back to Aurelia City in City Skylines. Today we are going to finish one really special project that was started a long time ago. I'm talking about the residential bridge. It basically is a large structure with these wave houses on top of it. On the downtown side of the river, it connects to the upper levels where we built some various low to medium density residential zones. There is also that futuristic tram corridor that cuts through the hill and goes into the huge park through the arch. Below the bridge there is a train station and some high-density mixed blocks. So overall, lots of verticality in this area. If you want, you can check out episode 26 where the bridge project was started. But today we will move to the opposite end of it and complete it. So let's go. So, like I mentioned in the previous episode, there was some infrastructure that I already completed before actually doing the plaza episode, the last one. But it was kind of not relevant to the previous episode, so I'm just going to show you what I did in today's time-lapse. But the result of this you could have already seen in the cinematics for the previous episode. So it's kind of something that I needed to show you with this project, but I did it before the previous one. So hopefully it's not going to be too confusing, but it kind of makes sense to just put everything together in here. But what am I exactly doing over here? So, as you could have seen in the opening cinematics, the bridge is obviously like a straight structure, but when it reaches the land, it kind of starts extending. It has this wide pedestrian and bicycle path on one side of it. It's actually where the buildings are connected to, and on the opposite side there is that tram road and this highway, which is just basically like a connection from one side of the river to the other. Now, on this side of the river, I kind of wanted to do the same, so that when you look at the bridge from some kind of a top view, when all these city parts around it are finished, then the bridge is also going to look the same on both ends of it, right? So, most of these elements that I'm doing in here, I was heavily just copying stuff from the opposite end of the bridge, because I really wanted to I really wanted to have the same style in here, all right? So we have that pedestrian path on one side kind of diverging. It connects to the pedestrian highway project, let's say. It's having like an intersection in here, this triangle. That's obviously the road that goes from that medium density area that we built like 2 episodes back or something and continues to the airport. In here I have a connection for the highway. It's not really a highway, it's just the highway road type. But it's basically just the road that I picked for the bridge. It's not really like a super busy highway or anything, right? So it doesn't really need to have like super beefy connections to these roads. It just needs to look good. I'm by the way cutting a lot of this stuff away from the time-lapse because this process in here with the roads was a lot of trial and error. So I'm just showing you some bits in here that were kind of most critical of the entire process, but I definitely tried a lot more possible configurations of these roads in this area in general, right? I definitely wanted to experiment with different levels. In here I, for example, finally decided to have this car road on the same level as the pedestrian road, and I did those intersections there. At first I didn't really want to do this because I wanted to have the pedestrian paths kind of uninterrupted, but it was just impossible to just get everything to its own level, because we're also going to have the tram road, don't forget that, which needs to go below this place, and there is already that highway that kind of goes underneath that pedestrian path, so it's actually going to be a bit of a struggle to put everything right. And I definitely don't want to put any kind of infrastructure above the surface level of the bridge, because the bridge kind of needs to be the tallest surface around this place, right? I'm definitely going to talk more about that later, because it's a concept that I followed even with the opposite end of the bridge, from the episode 26. This, what I was doing in here, is also kind of a remnant from the last episode, because this one, you can see that there is no plaza in there in that shot, because I was doing this before the previous build. I did this tram road. This is the tram road type that I haven't used anywhere else in the city, but I had it in my inventory for the longest of time, and it's basically like a very wide road with very wide green median for the trams. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work with the recoloring of the surface. I had to make it like pitch black in order to actually match the black color of the surfaces on Aurelia. But it's going to make the intersections look kind of weird. You're definitely going to notice that. So it's not exactly the easiest thing to work with these roads, but they look very good because they have that very wide grass median, and they have like a dedicated segment that you can do. I think I'm probably going to do it just in a couple of seconds here, where there's going to be the stop. So it's not going to make the stops automatically, just like, for example, the LRT tracks on top of here. But you have to actually put a different segment, yeah, this one, which is going to have the same width. It's just going to change the median, the grass median, into these almost vanilla looking platforms. So they are perfect, and they are actually kind of wide, which allows me to do this. I'm doing like a transfer station. Again, it's kind of obvious. We have the line that goes over the bridge. Those are the regular trams, and they're going to continue into some residential areas later past the bridge, but we also need to connect it to this light railway, which is going down here. This is the one that we have seen in the previous episode with that riverfront riverside plaza, right? By the way, I haven't really finished talking about that light railroad. So I basically connected it back in the previous episode. You could have seen that I made a track that went off this road and it went into the plaza through the residential blocks and whatever. But through this place, underneath the bridge, it's going to go on or in the middle of this road. I don't really want to do it absolutely everywhere because I kind of want to have the light rail go on its own tracks, kind of separated from all these roads, because I definitely don't want to just interrupt it too much. I really want to have those tracks go, you know, without intersections and things like that, because, you know, it's a light rail after all, so it kind of needs that. But in this particular place, I think it fits perfectly fine, so I went with this approach. Anyway, we are doing the second level, and as you can see, I did quite a lot of elevators in here. At this point, I wasn't still sure. Well, actually, at this point, I was already. But at the start, I wasn't exactly sure if it's going to work. If it is actually possible to put pedestrian paths to different lanes of a road, not exactly the sidewalks, you know, on the side, but even, for example, these platforms in the middle of the road. And if people will be able to connect to the pedestrian path. And, well, obviously, if I already do the detailing like this in the time-lapse, then you can tell that it is working. So that's very nice. I was really surprised that it works. There are some slight issues, like people are, for example, crossing the tram median, so it's not sometimes looking all that great. But that was actually a problem that was solved by doing something with the stops for the light rail, because there were some duplicate stops or whatever, so people were kind of walking around the place weirdly. Right now they are actually using the elevators. There are maybe just a handful of tourists, it's always the tourists, right, that are walking in different paths that I don't really want them to. But, you know, it was kind of too painful to deal with that, so eventually I just went with, you know, the standard behavior of the citizens, I guess, and didn't really bother doing any changes to that. Anyway, this second place, this the second level, is really shaping up to be looking rather nice. It's kind of small. It's a bit of a minimalistic tram stop, really. It's kind of similar styled to the one that we built some 4 episodes back or something with the airport landscaping video. If you remember, we also built like a minimalistic tram stop in that residential area. So this one is kind of similar. It has like a, you know, not so large surface on the level of the platform, and it just connects with some different levels through the elevators, which is not necessarily what we did before, but you know, it's just nice that all these tram stops look different. These places between the pedestrian paths and the tracks in here were kind of difficult to fill with some buildings, and I actually didn't even want to fill them with buildings because, again, I was looking at the opposite side of the river, and the bridge end looks pretty much exactly like this. So it has the fill inside of it with just grass. You know, there are just some trees and flowers mostly. It's just some decorations that are kind of standing out from the rest of the area, especially the areas below the bridge, which are kind of very high density without anything green. So in this case, I just used a lot of these retaining walls, just like on the other side of the bridge, and just made these tracks kind of cut through them, together with the highway, I guess, or with the road that also cuts through this green area. Kind of a nice element, doing these kinds of pillars in here to do these supports between the retaining walls. Again, something that I've used in Aurelia before, but I'm really not afraid of just recycling old ideas that I already did in the city, because I've mentioned many times before that it just, reinforces the idea that the city just follows one style. So it's perfectly fine to do this. But in here, I'm actually kind of going to overdo it a lot with these beams. Later, I'm actually going to put them even on that opposite side of that road. So you will see that there are going to be quite a lot of them. Now, in this area, as you can see, there are some empty places underneath this grass level on the level of the road with the light rail. Now, this is not exactly easy all the time. I tend to, every time I do these kinds of projects, I tend to do the upper levels first, and then I'm struggling to figure out the lower levels. So that's exactly that case. So procedural objects are usually necessary to just manipulate the various buildings to exactly fit those places. And again, I'm using that office building, which is just absolutely perfect. It's kind of boxy, so it's not really all that super interesting in terms of the shape, but that's pretty much exactly what I need for those kinds of places, for those kinds of fills. So, perfect. And perfect for procedural object manipulation as well, because it doesn't have that many vertices, so it's perfectly fine. Speaking of procedural object manipulations, I decided, well, this was kind of the plan that I already had going from that medium density residential area from those 2 episodes back. And that place I built using only one style or one set of these futuristic buildings. This area on the same surface level as the top level of the bridge is basically going to be also populated with these kinds of structures. But I was really struggling to pick the right edge where this residential area is going to start and basically the bridge area is going to end. So I finally decided it's going to be this road, because that's pretty much exactly how it is on the opposite side. If you remember, there is actually a bus going on this parallel road on the opposite side, and it's looking pretty much the same. It also connects to that highway style road that continues over the river. Now, on the opposite side, there is that cliff side or something, and on top of that, we have those low-density buildings. I didn't really want to overdo it with terraforming in this place too much to create some kind of a tall cliffs or, I don't know, something like that, because the map didn't have it, and I was not sure where I would connect it later. So I just decided to keep everything on one level, and we are kind of going to create like a line of buildings that are going to nicely symbolize that this is the start of the residential area. In this particular case, I decided to actually use pretty much all of these buildings with just procedural objects. And the reason for that is that these buildings, they actually look very good if you kind of manipulate them, if you scale them up and down with PO and do different kinds of sizes, because you're probably going to see that in cinematics, but this line of buildings, it kind of looks like, I don't know, a forest or something, where you have, the same types of trees, but with different heights or something, different shapes. So that's kind of looking rather okay. Later, I don't think I did it. I need to remember to do that. I'm probably going to put those blank buildings into these so that they are actually functioning. But there are going to be a lot of residential areas around this place, so there's definitely going to be no shortage of walk-in citizens. Anyway, like I said, you're going to see more of that place in the cinematics to kind of appreciate how it eventually turned out. This road, this roundabout in there, is connecting to 2 tunnels. Well, actually, it's going to be probably 3 tunnels, kind of like corridors through this area, because it's kind of difficult to explain it right now, but the roundabout that I built just there is kind of in a valley. And the valley is going to be like a large residential area. And all these roads that are going towards the river will need to somehow cut through this ridge. So there's that first tunnel that you could have actually seen in that previous episode already that I built at the start of today's episode. So that's basically cutting the ridge that goes between the residential bridge and the medium density area. There is also another tunnel that connects directly to the highway roads that are going on the bridge. So people going from that future residential area can cross the river quite easily. And there's also going to be another corridor, which I think I'm going to build in the next episode. So hopefully it's going to be clearer next time how I'm going to do it. I decided to finally go back to this place, but again, I'm not going to finish it. This is a very nice looking large building. Again, I think it's from France in real life. It's on the edge of different projects. It's actually going to be on the edge of 3 different projects. So it's going to have to wait for the next episode again, where I'm finally going to show you some completion of this area. And I'm also going to show you how I detailed that exit part for the light rail from the main road, because I did quite a lot of detailing with intersection marking tool there. But again, that part is not exactly relevant to what we are doing today, so I'm not really showing you that in today's time lapse. But I still have that footage, I still have that time lapse ready, so I'm going to show you that in the next episode. Skipping a lot through this process because we finally needed to finish or just populate some of these blocks underneath the bridge. And this is something that I definitely want to have very similar to the opposite side of the river, because I think the episode 26, when we started building the residential bridge, I think that was actually the first episode when I finally decided to go with the concept of like quantity expansions of some of these blocks, where I'm just going to use all kinds of different buildings that don't necessarily need to like fit with each other, but I just wanted to create these kinds of blocks, right, that don't look all that great, because the bridge kind of needs to stand out from the overall area. So that's exactly what I'm trying to do in here. I'm trying to use the lower buildings, like 1 maximum 2 floor buildings under the bridge, or on, you know, in the nearest vicinity of the bridge, because I definitely don't want to have any buildings on this lower level to be taller than the top of the bridge. The bridge really needs to stand out, even like in terms of colors, let's say, or detailing, but even in terms of geometry, let's say, or height-wise, right? So that's why I'm skipping a lot through the process of doing this, because it's just a random placement of various structures, and maybe even filling some of these insides with some procedural object offices like I was doing many times before, right? So you are going to see that in the cinematics, nothing all that super interesting. This is what I was talking about. Doing the intersections with these kinds of roads is kind of tricky because, well, it's not really tricky. You just need to fill it with ploppable asphalt, because there is that original network skins color showing through. But the actual surface of the color is kind of brighter, but fortunately it is kind of matched with the overall color of the Aurelia networks. Using a lot of these large commercial buildings, actually, or even office buildings and stuff, because they are very short. I don't necessarily want to have like a Walmart in here. So, and I really don't like those parking lots in front of these buildings. I think this particular Walmart building I actually switched into PO later, because I really hated how cars were just turning from the main avenue, even over the median, to park on the Walmart. So, you know, that's just really what I don't like, these kinds of parking lots that are part of these structures. But the structures themselves are just nice fillers for these kinds of places. So that's exactly why I even used that other large commercial building on the opposite side, and it just fills these places very, very nicely. I definitely built quite a lot of stuff for today's episode, so I definitely wanted to only focus on the actual end of the bridge, and there are definitely going to be a lot of these blocks, as you can see already in here, that I'm just not going to finish today. So that's just going to be something that we are gradually going to complete as we go forward with this entire district, and it's just going to make even the bridge kind of stand out more and more, because there are just going to be more buildings that are just, you know, going to be visible when you look at the overall area where the bridge is. This detailing was very important. Like I said, I kind of wanted to have the bridge stand out in terms of color as well. So especially these green areas are very important, and lots of trees around this place are also super important. This line of buildings, I finally decided to do it on gravel because it's just a different color, really, and it's actually all fake. These are made from procedural objects. You could have seen me do that there. The surface, yeah, you can kind of tell in here. The surface is not exactly on the same level. That's because we have that elevated road, and some of these buildings are kind of tucked underneath this place as well, underneath the gravel. For example, this commercial building down there. So this line of buildings is basically just covering that transition between all these kinds of places. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. I also did this in the time lapse. So the pedestrian road, the pedestrian highway goes over, or it intersects with this road. But fortunately now we have the intersection marking tool, and I can kind of make it look like the pedestrian road might actually have a priority over the cars in here, because it's kind of necessary. This is not like a super busy road, so it's perfectly fine to do it. Maybe later I'm actually going to put like timed traffic lights or something. I guess I could do that. I don't think I did. I could probably put some kind of timed traffic lights in here, basically make the cars have red light every time there is some pedestrian traffic on the road or something like that. Kind of really make cars have less priority in this place. And, you know, doing this kind of detailing to just extend those white colors of the pedestrian path even on the road, and do some kind of a shape, you know, some kind of fills inside of it. Intersection marking tool is also used with these connections to the bridge road. This was kind of very satisfying. I was using different kinds of roads in here as well with different asymmetric lanes, because I'm doing some kind of like dedicated turning lanes and merging lanes in these places. In this place, for example, I did a four-lane two-way road, and one lane on that left road in there I'm actually going to cover with some detailing. So it's going to be only 2 lanes in the middle, and it's going to just have like dedicated turning lanes right there. So using some network curbs and this procedural object details like this. Overall, it's going to look very, very nice. This is something that I didn't do on the opposite end of the bridge, but I was actually thinking of revisiting that place. Maybe I will. Anyway, this is the finished result, the transition to from before to what we finished today. So, lots of blocks open. Next time we are going to go and do those residential areas past the bridge. So that's kind of where we extended that pedestrian road that kind of goes nowhere right now. And we are also going to revisit and finally do 100% of the blocks that are still kind of on the riverside almost. So between the bridge and the plaza project that we did last time. So that's actually going to be very important to finish that, and this overall area is going to look much, much better. Here you can kind of appreciate the shapes, the different shapes of those residential structures, the residential towers that are forming the line, the kind of the end of the bridge. And from this kind of view, you can kind of see that the bridge is standing out, especially with the shape, how the pedestrian road and the car road is kind of outlining the edge of the bridge. This tram's transfer station is working 100% fine. It's just really satisfying to watch people use the elevators, and just like with the previous light rail stations and tram stations, it's very busy because there are a lot of people using it, a lot of people trying to cross the river and go into just different parts of the city. So overall, very nice public transport project that we did here today. Anyway guys, that is all for today's episode. Just a couple of things that I want to add. If you like this channel and want to directly support it, you can become the channel member through the join button below or the link in the description. And other things you can do is leave a like under the video, share it, and if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching this Aurelia episode. Stay tuned for the next one. Take care and goodbye.